When I finished that script, I knew that Colonel Landa was one of the greatest characters I've ever written and one of the greatest characters I will ever write.
Hans Landa is played by Christoph Waltz, a German actor.
Yes, yeah.
German actor who was not at the height of his career.
No. He's a TV actor in Germany.
And in fact, he said at Cannes, he basically, in a very emotional moment, said you had given back his career. Yeah. And you said something interesting too. You gave me my movie.
Villains come in many forms. Some announce their presence with chaos, others strike with brutality. But the most terrifying villains are the ones who don't need to raise their voice to make you feel powerless. Nowhere is this more masterfully proven than in the opening scene of Inglorious Basterds. A scene that not only sets the tone for the entire film, but carefully, deliberately, and terrifyingly introduces one of the most chilling villains in cinema history, Colonel Hans Landa. It begins like a painting, a quiet, idyllic farm, a man at work, the sun hanging in the sky. Nothing seems out of place until enter Colonel Hans Landa. Everything about this introduction is designed to deceive us. From the moment we see him, he is composed. There is no aggression in his approach, no immediate sign of hostility. He does not raise his voice, does not make any overt threats. But we already know something is off. The sheer formality of his entrance, the deliberate pace. This is a man who enjoys the process of the hunt. Landa does not storm into Lapidite's home with brute force. Instead, he shakes hands with Lapidite, smiles, compliments Lapidite's daughters, asks for a drink, and that's one of the first characteristics that makes him terrifying. This is not a man who needs to yell or threaten. His confidence is in his control of the situation. He knows that this family has no options but to listen to him, and that control is reflected in how Tarantino frames him. After entering Lapidite's home, asking for a glass of milk, both characters finally sit together to have a conversation. This is our first two-shot of many in this setting. At first glance, this shot seems neutral. The composition is symmetrical. Each man occupies equal space. Their heads are at the same level. This is Tarantino's first trick, making us believe this is a fair conversation. This is a carefully crafted illusion. Within minutes, that balance will begin to unravel. Because as the scene unfolds, we will see that Tarantino slowly, methodically, and terrifyingly tightens the noose around Perrier Lapidite, and he does it all through the framing of the two-shot. Landa's strategy is psychological. Landa does not take control forcefully, he takes it slowly. He does not ask direct questions, he takes his time, speaking slowly, methodically. Landa then drinks Lapidite's milk. This is another microaggression, a simple act, but one that establishes dominance. Why? Because it shows comfort. He is at ease in Lapidite's home, taking what he wants. Meanwhile, Lapidite barely moves. Then, notice how the frame closes in. We don't cut away, we just slowly, almost imperceptibly, move in. The walls are closing in on Lapidite, and he does not even realize it yet. He is now on the edge of the frame, while Landa is still framed on his respective side of the frame. This sends us a message. Landa is gaining more and more control over Lapidite, and he is getting pushed to the edge. Lapidite is almost at the mercy of Landa. Another clue that gives away the illusion of balance is how Landa takes much more space than Lapidite in the two-shot. Not quite physically, but symbolically. If you look closely, both characters are framed equally in the shot, but the cap of Landa is placed in Lapidite's frame territory. This is quite subtle, but helps showing the audience who is in power. Also, notice how in several shots where Lapidite is alone, Landa's officer's cap remains in the frame, resting on the table. This is a brilliant piece of visual storytelling, because even when Landa himself is not dominating the shot, his presence still lingers. It is a subtle assertion of power, a reminder that he is still in control, even if he is not physically occupying the space. We then cut to another two-shot with the same characters, but this time we switch side. This change in perspective reduces the presence of Lapidite and enhances the presence of Landa. He is now framed higher in the shot. This subtle height difference reinforces the hierarchy. Landa is figuratively towering over Lapidite, even though they are both seated. The character who is higher in the frame holds the power. In this scene, Tarantino shows us the power that Landa holds over Lapidite in a few different ways.
And I asked him, I go, let me ask you a question. In the script, it implies that this is definitely Landa's pipe, and he uses it to think. But let me ask you a question. What if Landa doesn't smoke a pipe? He knows the farmer smokes a pipe. And so at a certain point, he brings out this pipe. And what pipe does he bring out? He brings out the Sherlock Holmes pipe. One, you can say it's a sexual thing because my pipe is bigger than yours. All right, and the other thing, you can say, I know you're lying and I got you. I've got the Sherlock Holmes pipe.
When Lapidite nervously pulls out his small wooden pipe, Landa responds by calmly and theatrically unveiling his own massive calabash pipe. Let's be honest, have you ever seen anyone walk around with a pipe that big? This is not just for comedic effect, it's yet again a power move. The exaggerated size difference subtly reinforces who is in control of this conversation. Lapidite's pipe seems like a last grasp at control, but Landa effortlessly outmatches him, reducing Lapidite's attempt at authority to a mere joke. It is only now that we start to see the effect of what we were building up to. Lapidite is losing control. He is not speaking differently, he's not physically retreating, but his body is betraying him, and the camera picks up on it, keeping both men in the frame so we feel every ounce of the tension. Here's a few other ways that Tarantino depicts Landa's control. Landa never drops his smile, even as the conversation turns darker. This creates a deeply unsettling contrast. His words become more menacing, but his expressions remains warm and welcoming. This makes Lapidite's nervousness stand out even more, making his fear louder, while Landa's confidence remains unshaken. Landa does not order Lapidite to confess. Instead, he simply pauses, waits, and allows Lapidite to break himself.
You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not?
Yes.
This is the final sign of dominance. He makes Lapidite do the dirty work.
Point out to me the areas where they're hiding.
Reducing him to nothing more than a messenger of his own defeat. Finally, we arrive at the moment of total control. The two-shot has transformed. It is no longer a conversation. It is a suffocating visual trap. Landa's body takes up most of the frame, forcing Lapidite into a shrinking pocket of space. He cannot escape, and neither can we. When Landa stands up and begins slowly walking around the room, he claims Lapidite's space. This movement is casual but deliberate, reinforcing that he has no fear of Lapidite. Meanwhile, Lapidite remains seated and still, reinforcing that he is trapped. But before we get to the conclusion of the scene, we need to understand how every small detail counts. The cap in the frame, the pipe, the milk, the smile, the body language builds up to one thing. Landa is always in control. These microaggressions are what makes him so terrifying. He does not yell, he does not threaten outright. Instead, he lets his presence do all the work. This scene is not just an introduction to a character. This is a masterclass in psychological warfare. The way Landa takes control of a room, the way he turns a simple two-shot into a slow, burning chokehold of tension. This is why he is terrifying, because every time he is on screen, we already know what's coming. The best villains don't just make threats, the best villains make you feel like you were never in control to begin with. And with this scene, Tarantino makes us a promise that this guy is not like other villains. He does not scream, he does not need to wave a gun in your face. He controls the room with a smile, with a pause, with a carefully placed question. And it all starts with the two-shot. Tarantino never stops using this technique. Whether Landa is sitting across from Shoshana in a restaurant or casually chatting with Bridget von Hammersmark, he traps his victims in the frame before trapping them in his game. From the very first scene, Tarantino teaches us something important. When Hans Landa is in the frame, there is no escape, and every time he enters the room, we already know someone is not leaving unscathed.
J'ai dit